A warm reception for Donald Trump at Buckingham Palace today was overshadowed by a weekend of shattered diplomatic protocol threatening the already strained special relationship between the U.S. and the U.K. Before the president even touched down for a second state visit, he had renewed his feud with London Mayor Sadiq Khan, who published an op-ed in The Guardian arguing it's, quote, un-British to be rolling out the red carpet for a president whose divisive behavior flies in the face of the ideals America was founded upon, equality, liberty, and religious freedom. Trump responded from Air Force One, tweeting, Sadiq Khan, he is a stone-cold loser who should focus on crime in London, not me. Before he left, the president also waded into the Brexit debate uninvited, telling British newspaper The Sunday Times, if you don't get a fair deal, then you just walk away, ahead of a Tuesday meeting with outgoing Prime Minister Theresa May. But while Trump is giving advice to the British on Brexit, relations between the U.S. and Mexico remain in peril as a trade war looms following threats of punitive tariffs from the U.S. They're intended to force the Mexican government to work with Trump on border security and to appeal to the president's anti-immigration base, which I would argue is a coalition founded on issues of race, issues the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, is having trouble explaining.
You can't not be a racist for 69 years, then run for president and be a racist. And what I'll say is that when a lot of the Democrats call the president a racist, I think they're doing a disservice to people who suffer because of real racism in this country.
Was birtherism racist?
Look, I wasn't really involved in that.
Did you wish he didn't do that?
Like I said, I was not involved in that.
I'll take that as a yes. Joining me are Jennifer Braceras, columnist and senior fellow with the Independent Women's Forum. Good to see you. Michael Curry is the former president of the Boston NAACP, now chair of the National NAACP Advocacy and Policy Committee. Michael, it's good to see you, too.
Good to be here.
I want to play one more clip from that rather incredible Axios interview. Jonathan Swan is the interviewer, and he asked Kushner why he didn't call the FBI after getting an email from Russia seeking to help the campaign before the infamous meeting. This interview aired on Sunday. Here it is.
Let me put you in my shoes at that time, okay? I'm running 3 companies. I'm helping run the campaign. I get an email that says show up at 4 instead of 3 to a meeting that I'd been told about earlier that I didn't know what the hell it was about.
Would you call the FBI if it happened again?
I don't know. It's hard to do hypotheticals, but the reality is that we were not given anything that was salacious.
Can you watch an interview with one of the president's key advisors with very little relevant experience, hear these kinds of responses, there were many more, by the way, and not worry about who the president entrusts with huge amounts of power, Jennifer?
First of all, Jared Kushner shouldn't do interviews. I don't think that Jared Kushner should actually be working in the White House. That's a whole other issue.
Because of competence or nepotism?
I think he's in way over his head.
Okay.
I think he was in over his head with the campaign. I think he's in over his head now. I think he's not good with the media, as you saw there. That said, I think what he said about his meeting with the Russians is absolutely right. I mean, there's nothing wrong with members of campaign staff meeting with foreign nationals, even from countries that we don't have the greatest relationships with.
And not notifying the FBI afterwards is fine,
and that's
too?
never happened before. I mean, I'm quite sure that other campaigns have done that throughout history.
I was thinking a lot after I watched a lot of this interview. Scared, cautious, clueless. What? I mean, that was unbelievable if you watch the whole thing.
Yeah, disturbing again, and we've seen this from many in the administration, but this is just another example. Kushner clearly knows that they were trying to get dirt on Clinton and Democrats in those meetings from the Russians, and that's why they lied about the meetings subsequent to that.
It's not illegal to get dirt on people.
Ultimately, we're talking about a foreign nation that is a threat to the United States. So there's clearly a reason for him to have contacted the FBI. He should know that. And if nothing else, if he didn't know it the first time, if he didn't know it in that first incident, that interview should have been a different response.
Are you troubled by, before you respond, are you troubled by the fact that he didn't contact the FBI or that he wouldn't say for sure that he would in the future? She's not.
I'm troubled that he didn't contact the FBI originally, but I'm even more troubled that he doesn't, in hindsight, identify that was a
Jennifer,
I'm troubled that he is so insecure and so in over his head that he doesn't have the confidence to look that reporter in the eye and say, there is absolutely nothing illegal about meeting with a foreign national. Campaigns have done it before. They will do it again, and I'm not going to apologize for it. That's what he should have said.
And just on the issue of race and whether Donald Trump was not racist for 69 years, I'd be remiss if I didn't say this. We need to have it required that if you're going to talk about race, understand what racism is. he clearly doesn't even understand what racism is, because he's claiming that Donald Trump was never racist. I'd love to engage him on a conversation and see if he understands the basic definition of what that is.
Well, maybe he learned from the master. Let's talk about this, I guess, new kind of diplomacy, even though it's not for him. As I mentioned, even before the landing, insulted a member of the royal family. I'm not a big royalist, but still, they are who they are, Meghan Markle. He calls, as I said, Sadiq Khan a stone-cold loser. Then he gives unsolicited advice, like I described, is talking about meeting with the Brexit people. You know, someone texted me this afternoon, it's all because he's really upset he has to watch CNN while he's in Europe. He can't watch Fox News. But, you know, when I hear people like call our show today, it's just Trump being Trump. Right. There's a point after which people have to be a little more troubled than it's just Trump being Trump. No?
I actually think it's kind of hilarious.
How
Because,
so?
Well, because President Trump is basically a cartoon of everything the British think Americans are anyway. So this is what they've thought about us for, you know, decades, and here he comes just proving all of their stereotypes right. And
does it worry you about it? I mean, I will
humorous.
say the tiredest line of them all, he treats Kim and Putin better verbally than he treats people like Sadiq Khan, just as an example.
Well, I mean, the guy did write an op-ed trashing the President of the United States. I'm not justifying the President's tweet.
Well, the President did try to ban all Muslims, which is really what started this back and forth with Khan a year or so ago.
I understand that, but his op-ed saying that the British government shouldn't roll out the red carpet for the United States government is absurd. The British government will always roll out the red carpet for the United States government, and vice versa.
So what'd you make of the President's entry into UK politics and the UK?
Well, I mean, ultimately, we know he's not a statesman. He never has been, and quite frankly, I don't expect that to change for the rest of his presidency. I think his attack on Mayor Khan was, again, another example of leaders of color, whether it's in the United States or across the country, where he uses terms that I think is loaded language and offensive. The mayor of London really is saying that we don't appreciate his politics, his actions or his words, and it's not welcome here in London. I think he had a right to say that.
Neither of you are invited here as foreign policy experts, but nevertheless, you follow this stuff. Why was he invited at this particular time in light of some of the... Is it purely because, I don't belittle this, because you guys worried they can't cut a trade deal with their soon-to-be former EU partners, and they want to cultivate the United States, which is not a ridiculous reason.
Right,
Is that
I
what
think
it's
so.
about?
I think they're in political chaos over Brexit, and yes, it always helps to have the United States on your side. Absolutely.
You're nodding in agreement?
Yeah,
you think that?
absolutely.
Can we come back to Virginia? You know, almost every time there's a mass shooting in the United States, which is sadly quite frequently, what happens when a pro-common sense gun control leader says, we should have had background checks, we should have had this, we should have that, the discussion disappears almost immediately, because it's almost impossible to prove in that case that a background check or another reform had done it. Well, here, at least from what we know so far, this shooter had an extended capacity magazine or two or beyond that. We know that to be a fact. We don't know what that meant in this case.
I don't think we know how he got it.
We also know, no, we don't. And we know he got the guns legally, by the way, the .245 caliber handguns. We also know that the GOP in a party line vote in Virginia repeatedly votes down any limit on high capacity magazines. So am I naive in thinking, because it looks like we will be able to make a causal connection. Isn't 100% sure yet, but we will, that this might spark more action than mass shootings before have sparked?
Jim, you thought that Newtown would spark more action because it was little kids. You thought Parkland would spark more action because of the activism of the teenagers.
Right.
So to answer your question, no.
I'm naive again.
Yes, you are.
Am I?
I think you're naive, but I would say this. I'd say it's a totality of all these situations, and that, quite frankly, people are going to be weathered by all of these disasters and want to do something. And
Why aren't they weathered now?
Because a lot of them own guns.
I think it's a little bit.
But before you say, we've seen the same polls that 85% of NRA members are in favor of background checks. This
is the NRA's power and influence in politics. That's what this comes down to.
So for naive souls like me, is it ultimately, do we have to wait for a generational shift for something? Is that what's going to happen when the teens become 20-somethings and 20-somethings become 30-somethings?
I'm an
When does something
optimist.
happen?
I don't believe it requires that. I think that there's going to be a groundswell of that majority that you talked about, saying that we want common sense gun laws and we should ban those weapons of mass destructions and bump stocks and all those weapons and universal background checks, all the things that are common sense things for us to do. And we don't have to tie every policy decision to every particular disaster. They just make sense. Let's deal with mental health. Let's make the right policies and put them in place.
Well, mental health is the way to escape doing any. It is
I think
a serious
No,
issue.
but it's the major cause of mass shootings.
But who cries we have to deal with mental health has ever come up with a concrete funded solution to deal with mental health after they say it's not background checks, it's not magazines, it's not AR-15s, it's mental health.
Well,
but then,
they should.
I think it's all the above. I think you do everything you can to stop these mass killings.
15 seconds. How long do we wait? What is
Look,
there?
I just want to say what upsets me about all of this is every time there's a mass shooting, and it's primarily white people who are the victims, everybody goes crazy and talks about gun control and what are we going to do about it and yada, yada, yada. And meanwhile, the murder rates in the inner cities is still the same in most places, and black kids and Latinos are getting killed all the time.
But we could walk and chew gum.
But
theoretically.
but nobody talks about that. Everybody
I've heard him talk about it.
I
You
agree.
talk about it.
Black Lives Matter.
People
And if
get
they did, we
excited
would have
about
done
gun
something already.
violence when it's a mentally ill person that goes into a place and shoots a bunch of people. They don't get upset about it when it's gangs and
I'll
MS-13
take action on any on your list, by the
Okay.
way, and be happy. Michael, nice to see you.
Thank you. Always.
Jennifer, you as well. Appreciate your time. Thanks.